3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Good evening. It's Monday again already. Where has that week gone? Welcome along to Reading the Signs with me, Comedy John Ryan, and my pals from the world of comedy, showbiz, entertainment, and anywhere else I can find them, really. Every week we talk about mental health, mental wellness, what we do, why we do it, how we deal with the good times, the bad times. We want you to help as well. Let us have your top tips for well-being. Let us know you're there by putting comments in the box. Do give us a like on YouTube, SoundCloud, Facebook. Just tell your friends, really. And subscribe, of course. Very important that you subscribe at this day and age. Quick mention to Lost Boys UK for this fantastic theme tune. Have a look at my website, happytohelpyou.com. We've got great guests. We've got a great show. We've got a great audience. Let's get to it. Good evening. It's Monday already. Can you believe it? It's Halloween. Whatever that means. It's basically a load of kids knock on your door looking for sweets, and it's just not my favourite time of the year at all. I'm going to start by being miserable. Yeah, bar humbug. What's that all about? We never had that when we were kids, did we? Begging. People knocking on your door begging. Trick or treat. Trick or... Forget that. That's another American thing that we do not need. Okay? So forget trick or treat. Never. My kids never did it. I refuse to take part in it. And I'm so mean I turned the doorbell off. Anyhow, moving on from that. How you been? How's your week been? How's your day been? What you guys been up to? I've had a lovely day today because, you know why? Because it's raining and I love the rain. It's raining, 13 degrees. That does it for me. As always, let's start by pointing out the fact is it's been raining. Now, the truth is I like the rain. So my truth is it's been a good day. You may not like the rain. Your truth is it's not been a good day. We've both experienced the same event, but taken it in different ways. And as always, that's one of the things we talk about. When we talk about well-being and wellness, we all experience and interpret things in different ways. Anyway, enough of that. So I've just come back from Germany. I was in Germany and France doing some gigs to British holidaymakers, obviously. And it was fascinating. I love Germany. I know people don't really get it, but I just think everything works. You get the train at 8:02. The train is there at 8:02. You get off at 8:22 to get your connection at 8:30. The connection is there at 8:30. Unbelievable. The trains run on time. They're clean. They're great. And then France, more or less the same. We went to Strasbourg in France. My French is better than my German, but still not quite good enough for the French taxi driver who said to me, "Ah, vous parlez français?" I said, "Oui." And he went, I had no idea what he's talking about. I just occasionally nodded and went, oui, yeah, oui. But communication is 90% non-verbal. So obviously, not having the language, I could still have communicated with him if I could have seen him, but I couldn't see him because he was driving. I was in the back seat. And that, again, comes back to wellness and well-being. When we communicate, are we making eye contact? Are we looking at each other? Are we really trying to listen? Anyhow, let me tell you about tonight's guest. Tonight's guest, Mac Mcfadden, I've known probably about 20 years. It's one of my favourite people, actually. During lockdown, I used to tune into his show diligently. He's a great comedian, great poet, but he's actually a great man. Very interesting company, very kind, very caring, very decent. And Mac's got a really interesting way of looking at life, and it's more or less like myself. Get on with it. Just get on with it. That's not to say there's no sympathy, empathy, or love there, but sometimes if you just keep moving forwards, things can happen and things can change. Very important. He's also one of the finest poets, I believe, working anywhere in the country at the moment. And as we know, poetry, definite link between poetry and mental well-being. It's been kind of studied and researched quite significantly, quite broadly, and shown that poetry can provide avenues for self-expression, and it can be healing and restorative. So anyone out there who's got any problems, try and write a little poem. Mac will talk a little bit more about that as we come on, but I'm sure that he will agree with me that it's actually a very, very good thing. Interestingly enough, I'm a bit cold now. They did one of the first mood suicide studies I ever looked at when I did one of my projects was looking at British and Irish poets between 1600 and 1800. And apparently back then, they felt that people who were poets were 20 times more likely to end up in an asylum than the general population. So there's a lot more people in asylums who were poets. And there was no kind of understanding of this at the time. But they've done MRIs on poets, and they've shown that poetry causes the part of the brain that activates during daydreaming to light up. So when you're reading or listening to poetry, that bit of your brain, so it's the left-hand side, it lights up. And poetry often sticks with the reader, and it causes you to reread and memorize it. So whenever I travel, I am always accompanied by one of my favorite books, which is Poetry of the 1930s, which is all about the interwar years. And it's all about how society was changing, how they prepared to go off and fight yet again. Which, interestingly enough, brings us back to Mac, who has got an extended military career and still works now with the military as a civilian. So, without much further ado, what am I going to tell you about this guy? He's funny, talented, you know, he's genuinely a great poet, very spontaneous with his poetry as well. Just an all-round good guy. So I would really appreciate it if we could get some applause going and get maybe a little bit of cheering for him. There you go, mate. How are you?
John, I've got a technical glitch here. For some reason, there's no sound coming out.
Ah,
I can't hear you. We did a test
can't
before.
hear me.
Perfect. And
Yeah.
For some reason, it's no longer... the sound's not coming out of my phone. Do you want to leave the room and come back in?
Do that.
I'll try
Do
that.
that.
Sorry about this,
Do
folks.
that. Well, there you go. I gave him a big build up, and then he mucked it up. Typical poets. You can't trust them. Anyhow, anyone out there who's listening, let me know that you're there. Do put your comments in the bar. Tell me what you're up to. Tell me what you think. Tell me if you're enjoying it. If you're not enjoying it, just give me a general idea of what you'd like to talk about. Anything you'd be willing to ask Mac, who is a great poet, as I say. A big fan of poetry. Let me just keep going on. Ben, you're out there. I know you're out there. I can see you're out there. Ben, if you've got anything you want to add to the conversation tonight, please do. It's always good to hear from you, bruv. Yeah, there's just something about poetry that I love. It's not just about the kind of wordcraft of it, but it's the thought process. It's about how poets tend to think outside the box. So let's see if we can get him to join us. Mac, can you hear me at all?
I can now.
There you go. Mate, I gave you the best intro I've ever given a guest. All about how poetry is good for the brain, helps with recall, memory, and you couldn't even be bothered to hear me. Typical.
No, that's how ignorant I am, John. I'm terrible.
Mate, I don't even know what I like. Going on.
I know.
So tell us.
I even
tell
hate
us
me.
what you've been doing today, mate. Tell us what you've been up to today.
What have I been doing today? I've been working. I still am a full-time reservist with the Army. And so
Okay.
I've been working from my place of work, which is in Horse Guards. And today we had a daytime session on diversity, inclusivity.
Inclusivity. We've done this one, mate. Inclusivity.
I know. I'm doing inclusivity. And you see what an intellectual poet I am, that I can't even say inclusivity. And and unconscious bias and things like that, because the Army's moving forward on all this. So that's what we're doing today.
Brilliant. And it's very timely because tomorrow, my company, Happy to Health You, we are running stereotyping sessions at a university hospital. And
Well, there you go.
It's very interesting when we talk about diversity, inclusivity, because one of the things that bonds us is communication, and poetry. No finer way to express yourself, I don't think.
No, it's a release, I think, and that's about it.
Yeah.
For me, it's a release to empty all the junk that appears in my head, and that's my outlet.
No, great. But before we get on to that, let me just take you back to your early years. Where are you and your family? You got brothers? You got sisters?
I'm the oldest of 6, half Irish family. Dad from Belfast, mum from New Ferry in the Wirral, and I'm the oldest of 6, and brought up in a place called Ellesmere Port. Anybody been there?
Yeah.
Beautiful place. It's not. Yeah, there's better ports than Ellesmere Port, but I got brought up in that one. And then joined the army for years and years and years and years, and now live in Nantwich in Cheshire.
Nantwich. Before we get any further, let me just
Yeah.
have a quick shout out to Robert Van Buren. Thanks for coming along, Robert. Robert is my time travel expert. He's a horologist, but you know,
Hello, Robert.
good to have a job. Good to have a job, ain't you? I once done a gig in Northwich and wrote loads of funnies all about Nantwich.
Oh, did you?
And yeah, because they're such a comedy literate audience, they just let me do it. They just let me keep going on about Nantwich and you know historical stuff about it. And then when I finished my hilarious routine to silence, they went, "You're in Northwich, mate." Ah, right, okay. So no canal then. Okay. Yeah. So
But
tell us about
I
your
bet
early
you-
years.
I'm going to say, John, I bet you the next night the people of Nantwich loved your Northwich material.
Oh well, mate. If only that were the case.
Yeah.
But although I did also once, I was with a manager who had a booker who used to book my dates, and I had to ring her up one day and go, "I cannot do Southampton to Northampton on the same night." She went, "Well, why not? It's the South and North. They're both in Hampton." Okay, mate. Yeah, I'll get that. Quick hello to Sue Chapman. Thanks for coming along, Sue.
I know her. She's not a cousin, but she's like a cousin. Her family were really good friends with my mum, and she's like a cousin. She's
not a cousin, but she's like a cousin.
Yeah, she is. She's as close as family as a cousin, and
so she's close enough
lovely
to be a good friend.
Yes,
but a little bit more than that. That's nice. I like that, mate. I've just, in fact, this evening, been talking to someone again about another project I'm looking at maybe starting. I think blood is thicker than water. However, you don't always want thick liquid. You know, sometimes friendships are closer. Yeah. Don't want that thick liquid. So, as a kid, were you happy, Mac? Were you a happy child?
Yeah, I was happy, happy-go-lucky, because I was scatty and absent-minded and distracted and stuff. So yeah, I was just always prattling around, hyperactive, and so didn't really think about life too seriously. I was a pretty happy kid. Yeah.
Academic at school, were you bright?
Yeah, but I had distraction issues, and all my school reports would say he could be top of the class if he just sits still for 2 seconds. So I had that. And the only thing I was really interested in was writing and English and then the poetry thing.
Interesting one. So at school then, secondary school, did you shape up and tighten up, or were you just a chancer? Were you just like a mucker about?
I was just a mucker about it. I squandered my educational years. I mean, the problem was they forced you at the age of 13 to decide what you want to do for the rest of your life. So you pick the wrong trade, take the wrong subjects you're not interested in to go along with that trade, and then flunk them all. What they should have done was they should have gone, keep on doing your subjects, and then when you leave school, they should have gone, well, you're good at this, and this. You want to gear yourself towards these jobs instead of making a scatterbrained little hyperactive kid pick that decided to be an electrician and hasn't got a scientific gene in his body. So yeah, I took all the scientific subjects, John, and they stared out the window for 3 years.
And then, so what about the brothers and sisters? Were they all brighter than you? Were they all kind of in fear of you? Were you a good big brother?
Yeah, I think I was. Yeah, we're all different in our own way. I've got the one that's youngest is our Jed. He's 11 years younger than me, and out of the brothers, he's the most like me. And got really close with my sister, and I got a brother called Dave who writes poems, and my sister does, and my mum did as well. So yeah, runs in the family.
No, I thought it's fantastic. And then what happened after school? What did you do when you left school?
Did a couple of. Do you remember back in the days of yore in the 70s when they sort of plugged the unemployment gap with cheap labour, where they put people on youth opportunities programs, yacht schemes they were called. I did 2 of those. I did one in a music shop for 6 months, and then I did one at the Shell Oil Refinery in an office for 6 months. And then I was on the dole for ages and looked around Ellesmere Port, realised I need to get out of it, needed a job with a roof over my head, so I joined the army.
And then how old were you when you went into the army?
17 3/4 because my
Wow.
dad, being from Belfast, didn't. Yeah, he wasn't going to sign the paperwork because he was worried that I'd get sent to Belfast or sort of
Yeah,
Northern
well,
Ireland. I get
understandable.
blown up.
Really.
And but I said, well, if you don't sign it in 3 months' time, I'll be able to sign it myself. But I did promise him. I said I won't volunteer to go to Northern Ireland. You know, I did keep to that, and weirdly, I never got sent.
What regiment were you in?
I originally, when I joined up, I didn't have a clue what I wanted to join. I wanted to join the Navy. There was a 2-year waiting list. Tried the Royal Air Force, 6-month waiting list. Tried the Army. They hit me over the head with a shovel and dragged me in. I went to join. Yeah, I know. I went to join the Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers at first. And good job I didn't do that because I haven't got a mechanical gene in my body. And I ended up in the Royal Army Ordnance Corps, which is basically, it's got about 11 trades in it, but it's predominantly supply and stuff. I think they've got, might have some people coming in to play games, so you might get a bit of background noise.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell us where you are tonight. Where are you?
I'm in the Union Jack Club in London at Waterloo, right opposite Waterloo Station. It's a forces club, the Armed Forces Club, you know, for all of the Navy, Royal Air Force, Army. Yeah, so it's because I'm a member and I needed to get a static place with a Wi-Fi signal. I came here last night and tested this room, which they told me would be empty, but tonight it seems to be very popular.
Well, you know, that's the joys of the military for you, isn't it? Really, you'd go.
It is.
Yep, we can guarantee you this. And so, how long were you in the army for?
I joined up for 3 years, John. And as you can tell now, I don't have a mathematical gene in my body because I did 22. I did 22 years.
Wow.
Got out for 2 years and then got sounded out about a job in Horse Guards in London where I now work. And I went there for a stopgap for 3 years again. And I've been there 19 years now. So if you work that out, that's nearly 42 years of the army all told.
That's incredible. Yeah. That's an amazing achievement. And also, your office is pretty funky, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a really good office. It's, you know, where the Troop and the Colour is, and when it's performed each year, the parade is each year. Look out the window, out of our office window, there it is right below you. So yeah, it's in a really, really great location.
Wow, brilliant. And then, so where did
a
the
lot
college...
of history as well, by the way.
Tell me about the history.
Oh, it's great. I mean, Duke of Wellington's office was in there. It was part of the Palace of Whitehall until the fire wiped out most of it, and so Horse Guards have been there since 1700s, and it was initially going to be the Queen's residence, believe it or not, but by that time, the palace had just been commissioned, and the Queen and the royal, the Commonwealth was the King of the Queen at the time, moved in there, and the clock at Horse Guards was the original main timepiece in London. You know, like Big Ben is now. It was the one at Horse Guards before the clock.
Okay, yeah.
Before Big Ben, yeah. So,
do you still get that sense of history every day when you go into work, or do you take it for granted?
You sort of take it, but you know what? I remember once, John, watching the film, the Ipcrest Files. It was Michael Caine walking across Trafalgar Square. Yeah, and I remember thinking, you know what? I'd love to do that, being, right near Big Ben, right near Trafalgar Square. Must be brilliant. And then I do it, and I don't realise that was a dream. I don't realise now that sometimes I'm living a dream, because you have to look up some days. Sometimes you just take it completely for granted, and then some days you stop and go, whoa, wait a minute, look around you, look where you are. Because I went to Horse Guards when I was 8 years of age or 9 years of age in school, and London was so bewildering to me. It was like I'd gone to Australia from Ellesmere Port, and all these big courtyards and buildings. I couldn't tell the difference between Horse Guards and Buckingham Palace. But if somebody had told me I'd be working there all these years later, and I'd be there for nearly 20 years so far, I'd have thought they were nuts.
Wow.
But there you are.
No, just incredible. I remember coming up and just being just wowed by walking up steps and thinking of the history that was on those steps and the paintings and the view.
Yeah.
And all the rest of it. So during the Queen's funeral, what was your role?
I didn't have one.
Was there not practicing and stuff going on downstairs for you to go? Come on,
It
lads.
didn't involve me. No, it didn't involve me. They kept me one other way. Said he's a poet. You know, get him out of here.
We don't know
Yeah,
Ponzi
throw
poetry
it
in
out.
there, mate.
Yeah. So that's it. Yeah, get that distracted out here, and that was it. So no, there was people who, because that happens. That's, you know, that was planned. They don't just have a funeral and go, "What we're going to do?" That is planned and trained for by a team of experts. That especially, you know,
Well,
that's
yeah,
special.
but I think that's what people didn't realise when they saw the precision of it. That's practice, 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 isn't it?
Yeah. You know, so they're always planning for an event like that. They're really professional.
With that being disrespectful, the guys that carried the coffin got formed over like they were so good. But no, that's practice. That is not. They didn't wake them up that morning and go, "Come on, lads, you're going to carry the Queen's coffin." There was a lot.
No, I mean,
a lot of drilling went into that, didn't it?
That is, I mean, I think their parents, grandparents will be having that picture above the fireplace, and that'll, you know, that's some of those lads. Yeah, they did a fantastic job, because that must have took nerves of steel to be doing that. One, you know, you think one trip, one stumble, but they were absolutely brilliant. I remember watching them thinking, "Well done, lads." Real young
let's be
soldiers.
honest.
I thought they were brilliant.
You got like 1 billion people watching you.
Yeah, I know. Not now, obviously. You're on about then.
Yeah, then. I mean, we got slightly less than that. So, a couple of questions I've got for you. So, the lads that stand on guard duty and they're with their big bearskin hats on, and they just stare into space, and the tourists keep going up and trying to get them to move. Are they allowed to give anyone a slap, or rather than go step back from the Queen's Guard? Is there, or the King's Guard?
No, I don't think they could start slapping people out. That'd be frowned upon. Yeah, I think that would end up in the papers and stuff. And yeah, I mean, what they have to. I'm quite proud of the fact that I've been there 19 years and never been yelled, "Get out of the way of the Queen's Guard," or King's Guard. It is now, because some people block the way and they have to yell at them. And it's never happened to me yet. The way I daydream, I'm surprised it hasn't, but it hasn't happened to me yet. No, so yeah, they have to be controlled in what they do. You know, they're very disciplined.
And is that something that comes through training, or is that innate, or is that, you know, just chance? How does it work?
It's not chance. People, you know, because they're from the household division of quite you know, an elite, you know, band of regiments, and they you know, they're known for their discipline, high levels of training and professionalism, and so anybody who goes into that knows that that's what's expected of them. But people don't realise when they see a guy who stood there, you know, with the bearskin hat on. I once saw a young lady go up to her husband and go, "What a boring job." She didn't realise that 2 months later that guy could be out in Afghanistan on the front line, you know.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them are in the tears. You got, you know, household cavalry people there as well. So get other jobs as well as just doing that.
Quite amazing. And does everyone know about your sideline, your poetry, and the other stuff you do?
Quite a lot of people. I mean, people where I work do, and then sometimes I get people going and say, "I saw you on the show last night," or "I saw you on a video, and I didn't know you did that." Yeah. And so I just let people find out for themselves, to be honest with you.
No, I think it's incredible. Where did the comedy come from? What made you decide to try and do some stand up?
I've always been able to make people laugh. I used to do a lot of amateur dramatics in the army, theatre and stuff like that, and in the army as well. When we were in the Falklands and places like that, Bosnia, I used to. I was almost like a stand-up version of my own Baron Knights. You remember them when they used to do a pastiche of songs? So I used to write my own lyrics to songs.
Okay.
When I was in the Falklands, about a place in the Falklands. So instead of the streets of London, it would be the streets of Stanley, and I do stuff in Bosnia. And then what happened was, somebody said to me, "If you can do that stuff for us, you could go and do it about other stuff and go and do it in pubs and stuff." And that's where it took off from.
Because you got James Blunt as well, wasn't he? Household Cavalry.
He was, yeah. He was. I didn't know him. I don't know him personally. But yeah, he was probably in around the time when I first went to Horse Guard, to be honest with you.
Yeah, quite an interesting character.
Yeah.
I did warm-ups for him and I'll be honest with you, I'm a straight heterosexual. Let's make this very clear. But he's one of the
Yeah.
sexiest men I've ever met in my life.
Wow.
That man's sex appeal. I've met 3 men in my life who I've gone, if you could bottle that, you sell that, you'd be a multimillionaire. They just ooze sex appeal. Okay. James
So that
Blunt,
was
definitely
him,
one of them.
me, and who was the other one?
Russell Brand.
Okay.
Russell Brand had women falling at his feet. I've never. Russell Brand, James Blunt, and the third one, and you know my politics. Honestly, I think one of the sexiest men I've ever been around, Boris Johnson. I genuinely
Wow.
mean that. I'm not being funny. The effect that man has on women, you've got to see it to believe it.
Is that animal magnetism? That
I don't know what it is, but I worked with him a few times. Because during the war there was a big disaster at Bethnal Green tube station, and Tasha's great aunt was one of them. So we helped fundraise to build a memorial at Bethnal Green tube station, which is still there. If you could pass by, have a look at it. And so we asked Boris to help fundraise because he was a London mayor at the time. And fair play to him, he said, "All right then." And he came along and he helped do some auctions. Oh my god, the place was mobbed more so than even when we had ex-Arsenal or ex-Tottenham players helping us.
wow. Did you sound me out about that at the time? I'm sure
Yeah.
you did.
Yeah.
You did.
We
I
tried
remember you
to
mentioned. I
see.
remember you telling me about
You
this. Yeah.
sent some lads up to the actual day when we had the opening.
That's right. I remember it sticks in my mind. Yeah.
Yeah. No, they were good lads. They wouldn't take any money or anything. They helped, but one of them actually helped butter some bagels. So that was quite a scene to behold. A lad in military uniform buttering bagels. Do you want cheese with that?
That's probably a new life skill for him there. Put that on his CV. I buttered bagels at Bethnal Green.
And that's not easy to say. Butter bagels are better than green, is it? So
It's a great
welcome
liver.
anyone who's listening to us on SoundCloud or on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. We're all over social media. But I am John Ryan here on Reading the Science this week, where we're talking with Mac Mcfadden about poetry, comedy, the world, buttering bagels, all sorts. It's always I love people who've got like a rich backstory, and you've got a very rich backstory, mate. And I've always found that very fascinating. Like you get on a train, you just look like a bloke, but actually, when people get to know you, there's a lot more going on there, isn't there?
Yeah, I like to think so. Yeah. I think people just thought it was an oddball on the train because I chat to people. I'm calmed down a little bit now, but I used to just chat to anybody on the train. I'd make conversation. I even tried to start a train Christmas party once. I didn't quite pull it off, but yeah.
Just brilliant.
But then I realised a lot of people don't want to do that. They want to be insular on a train. And
yeah. Always hard to get a conga going on a commuter train, mate.
It certainly is.
So let me ask you this: so you started doing a stand-up, and which is where we met, and then what was the love then, the stand-up or the poetry?
When I started doing a stand-up poetry, that was what I wanted to do. And then when I started on the stand-up circuit, I realized I had a different dynamic. It was, you'll know this yourself. You do a nighttime gig. Stand-up comedy is one of the few genres of entertainment where people get rat-arsed before they go and do it. People turn up. You don't get turned up drunk to go to a theatre. You don't turn up normally unless you're a lunatic and looking for trouble at a football match drunk. You don't go to a gig normally drunk. You might have a few drinks and enjoy yourself, but for some reason, stand-up comedy people will think I need to get drunk because they're worried they might get picked on by the comedians. They drink a bit too much, and then they think they're helping by blurting out all the way through it or trying to make themselves the center of attention. So I realized that when I'm doing stand-up comedy gigs at night time, and it's full of stags and hens and drunken people, well, you can only hold their attention span. You can't do, if you're doing straight stand up, you might be able to do with gags. If you're doing poems and they've got to listen to you for a couple of minutes. So I found a different dynamic with that. And so I started then cutting the poetry out. I would just doing straight stand up. But then one day I thought, I'm selling my soul here. This is what I'm starting out to do. And so I went back.
And it was interesting for me, like I mentioned during my introduction, lockdown, mate, we used to love have a little glass of wine and watching your Facebook lives, and it was
Yeah, and I
like being
noticed you
part of
were
a
a few of them. Yeah.
yeah, we did, and you'd be like it's like being part of a big family, and it was you've got these communication skills that come together. It's actually difficult to reconcile you, the friendly comedic poet, with the trained killer who could snap my neck at 50 paces. It's
I remember we did a gig. We did a gig once. So it was somewhere, and you were there as well. You've been on stage as well, and I was there, and I've been on. And somebody said, "It's all right for you. Nobody echoed you because we thought you might jump up and batter us."
yeah,
And I went, "Wow." I thought you
yeah,
might be thinking, John being the acne boy, you might have thought that more about him. But yeah,
no.
that was
I'm sweet and gentle. It's all image. It's not. I'm a big baby, really.
so am I.
Although last night I did suggest to someone that if they carried on talking to me the way they were, it wouldn't end well. And they went, "Can't you take criticism?" I'm like, "But no, that's not criticism. You're abusing one of the other performers, like really aggressively abusing them." I was going, "Whoa, whoa, stop!
Wow.
The guy's just trying to make you laugh. He's not trying to sell one of your children or steal your missus or set your house on fire. He's just trying to make people laugh. Admittedly, it's not working. However, why do you get so upset? What is it?" And I think it's because comedy and poetry, they're the two genres where if you get it wrong, you ruin someone's night. You can go see a band and they're rubbish, but you just have a beer and get over it. You see a bad comic
Yeah.
or a bad, yeah, poet, they don't like it, do they?
No, they don't. They don't. But the thing is, it's so subjective. Every
Yeah,
comic's going to have a bad night, but
yeah,
comedy and poetry are both subjective. I feel like I don't really fit on the stand-up comedy circuit. To be honest with you, I could do it, but I don't feel like I belong on there. I don't feel like I belong on the poetry circuit really. When I was doing those shows, I sent it out to quite a lot of people, but I didn't weirdly invite a lot of poets to it because for years I tried not to put the word poetry in my titles from a show because it just tended
yeah,
to put people off. People who come to watch or have tuned into my shows have gone, we weren't expecting that. I think I really sit more with a theatre audience.
yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? When you say you're a poet, it's like saying you're a Jehovah's Witness. Straight away, people
Yeah,
are
it
like,
is. Yeah,
"Oh dear,
exactly. Yeah, it is.
oh dear." We don't like we
Yeah,
don't mind you doing it in the privacy of your own home, but oh no, no.
exactly.
So,
Exactly.
I mentioned in the introduction, which you missed, whenever I travel, I always have a copy of my favourite book of poems, which is Poetry of the 1930s, which I think was the
Okay.
greatest decade for poetry in history. Nothing comes close to it. But am I wrong? Am I looking in the wrong timescale?
I don't know. I'm not an expert, mate. I just do what I do. I mean, my influence was a lot later with John Cooper Clarke and
Okay.
people like Attila the Stockbroker and people like that. So
Mate, Attila the Stockbroker. Why John Cooper Clarke? Because he was quite an interesting character.
because I was into the punk scene around 1978,
Right.
79, and he was known as the punk poet, and he got on stage at punk gigs. I mean, he was the rite of passage that fellow earned by standing on stage doing poetry in front of punks, spitting phlegm at him, and throwing beer at him and
Yeah, just
bottles and
incredible.
everything.
Absolutely incredible. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Because he's not a big bloke
He's
either. He's a very slightly built bloke.
yeah, well, he's one of those. See, this is the thing, mate. I've got to be honest, man. It's the sweatiness of it. My poets from the 30s, they wore suits. They looked good. John Cooper Clarke, as much as I can be entertained and engaged by him, he just looks a bit grungy and a little bit sort of, you know,
That's
alternate.
because of the
Maybe that's
punk
what it is.
thing.
Yeah,
That's
it's that
what he
punk.
was
I never went to.
completely alternative. And you know what, John? John, I went to watch him last year at Nantwich Literary Festival, and I did not expect to see a queue literally right round the town to
Yeah,
go and see him.
unbelievable. Yeah, unbelievable.
It was round that I thought this is me. There'd be me, the cleaner, my wife, and somebody that I'd managed to chloroform and drag in through the front door, and that'd be it.
Yeah, I because he's got Alzheimer's now, and John Cooper Clarke. And
I think,
yeah, he's got Alzheimer's. And I heard an interview with him where he said the thing about having you always look at the positives, and the thing about Alzheimer's is you get to meet new people every day. You can hide your Easter eggs, and you get to meet new people every day. And I thought in
yeah,
that's that silly kind of irreverence but thought provoking stuff that you do.
yeah. I don't know. What do I do? Thought I didn't know I was thought provoking.
Yeah, man. A
You know
lot
what?
of your stuff that you put on your Facebook page, like the Squaddies Lament thing, it's just fantastic, mate. It's just, you know,
I rewrote that. When I first did that, I tell you when I wrote that, John, when I was about 19 years of age, and I
wow.
wrote it from a perspective of what I thought it would be like joining the army, going all the way through it, and coming out the other side. And it was a completely jocular poem. And then basically, when I got out, there was the Afghan and then Iraq war, Afghan and Iraq wars kicked off, and I thought, you know what, I need to now add in a little bit more poignancy in that. And so there's more serious bits in it towards the end as well. And then I sort of finish off with a funny bit. But I thought I'm doing the army all the services in this service. If I just do the funny side, I had to sort of make people aware of what goes on behind the scenes in that one.
Yeah, no, it's a cracking poem. My boys, as I call them, my boys. And the thing is that sometimes, like Tasha will go, you keep reading that book. You must have read it 1,000 times. But I'm like, but it's just something about poetry that you can just read it again and again, and the different nuances and the different ways that you know, stick to certain paragraphs. Louis McNeice, if I don't know if you come across a lot of his work, but the guy was just genius as far as I'm concerned. I did A
You
level
have to
English.
send me a link. You have to send me a link to
Yeah,
this book, John, and
Stephen
I'll check it
Spender,
out.
John Bateman. They're just Lou McNeice would write about everything from like the rain to cinemas, just about. There's this whole beautiful thing because during the 1930s we came from the First World War, and we got the Second World War. So you got this country in change, in flux, getting ready for another war. I mean, imagine how it must have felt for them lads of like 21, 22, thinking they've lost their limbs, they've lost their families, their communities, their villages, and now we've got to go and do it again. And they told us if we did it the
Yeah,
first time, that's unbelievable, to go through the horrors of that first one, to go, oh man, have we not learned?
no, you're right. I wrote a poem about that. It was called "I Was Not There." Somebody got me to write. We did a tour of the Somme, and I went with the household division and members of the King's Troop, Royal Horse Artillery, and people like that. And we went round the Somme, and at the end of it, they said, "Could you write a poem about it? I'm doing it at Timecott Cemetery tomorrow." I thought, wow, a bit of pressure there. I did it, and it was one of my better poems. I think one of my better serious poems.
Mm.
But I actually said before I read it, stick your hand up, all those who would like to have been here during, the Somme, and only one hand went up out of all these people, which tells
Uh,
you how
yeah,
brutal
yeah,
and how hard it was at times. Yeah,
yeah, and that whole thing of, again, the thing for me, that the whole interwar years, because when we look at Britain now, people always go, "Oh, it's better in the old days." There's a guy called Richard Townsend who he did a survey on, was life better when you were a child, or is it better now? Everyone went, it's better when I was a child, and then their children would go, it's better when I was a child. Then their children would go, better when I was a child, and so consequently, we always think it was better when we were children because we had no responsibilities. But when you get back to the 30s, people have to start going, well, no, it's better now, and yet they had
yeah,
nothing.
yeah.
And that's why cinema was so big, because you had this again, it's one of McNeice's poems about how you sat in this womb like warm comfortable shell where nothing could hurt you, everything was taken care of, all your needs was taken care of. You'll have a fag, a drink, something to eat, it's dark, it's safe, it's comfy, and it's just like, then you come out of the womb and the reality of life, bam, hits you. It's
I'm
just
going to check
wonderful.
this guy out now.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah,
is his
yeah.
name spelled McNish?
E ECE. Yeah.
Right, because there's a female poet, Holly McNish.
Yeah.
And she's doing massively well. You know, she's got albums out and all sorts.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? It's almost like a renaissance of good poetry now, and good. It's almost like it's been validated. I think a lot of it is down to the fact that young people now are redefining entertainment and everything. And spoken word rapping is spoken word, isn't it? Even these grime guys or the drill lads who are killing each other, at least they're vocalizing it and verbalizing it. And surely
Yeah,
it's better out than in, as it were.
yeah, gotta be.
Yeah, Lem Cisse. I worked with Lem Cisse a couple of times, and
Yeah,
just incredible, man. You know, he should be the angriest man on the planet. Like, just you know, even Ben Zachariah, they're just
yeah.
amazing. To think that, because I think if you can make a living out of doing something you enjoy, all power to you. But who wants to be a poet or a sculptor or a potter?
Johnny Vegas. Um,
Johnny
he
Vegas.
was a pot, wasn't he?
Yeah. Yeah.
But he's decided to become a comedian instead. That's how difficult it is to make a living as a potter. So basically, when you just said there about about poets and stuff like that, making a living, 70% of, you might have mentioned it earlier on. I couldn't hear what you were saying, but 70% of books that are sold on poetry are written by dead poets.
Yeah. Well, I was
Yeah,
going to come on
so
to that.
most living poets trying to make a living from.
I was going to suggest that you become more popular, but I don't mean to take it seriously. But
Yeah.
do you have to be the Dead Poet Society? Do you have to be dead before your poetry? Has it got to be the artist as a struggle, or has it got to be about the pain of creativity?
I think it's just hitting the right place, the right pitch, the right note, with the right people at the right time. I think there's probably poets that are absolutely amazing out there that have not been seen or heard,
Yeah.
and then there's probably others that aren't as good as other people, but they've been there at the right place, right time. Same with stand up, same with music, same with everything.
Yeah, no, it just fascinates me. Like I say, because I was brought up in a house that there wasn't really much reading and education going on, to be honest. Um, but I just loved. I think when I was very very young, there was a series on about the Strauss family, and I just loved the music and the pomp and the dancing and all that. And then I used to, because I was always in trouble at school, I used to have to go into our neighbour after school, and she would give me a book and say, "Read that, shut up, have a drink, and not a word out of it till 6 o'clock." And it just was like, so we started off with Shakespeare's sonnets, and then T.S. Eliot, a little bit of Robert Burns, and then before I knew it, I got the pattern and the rhythm of poetry. I understood how you build a picture. And that's what I try and do with my comedy, where I tend to talk about things you can relate to, go to Witherspoons or, put the bins out. Because and that all for me goes back to, which I always thought you was one of the bravest performers I ever met, because you just would go up and go, I'm going to do a poem now. And people going, oh, Jesus Christ, man. If he starts doing crochet, I'm going to kill him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And do you know what's funny?
Oh,
When we first went into lockdown and you was on about mental well-being and stuff like that, somebody contacted me and said, "Could you do a show during now we're in lockdown just to cheer us up a little bit?" And I sat in my house, John, and I'm thinking, what am I doing this for? I'm sat in my house in my kitchen or my conservatory in Bicester, and I thought, I'm gonna get feedback. This is pointless. Anyway, what happened was I just started doing it. You get all the comments coming in. And I started
yeah.
off, I thought I'll just do 30 minutes. I won't intrude on people's time. And then I did a couple more, and then people were going, oh, this is really cheering us up, this. And then they were complaining, saying half an hour wasn't long enough.
Yeah.
And then they ended up going to 90 minutes. I did about 30 of them all told in the end. I felt really comfortable as well. But it's just
well, it's
bigger work
interesting
now,
because
John.
Steve Gribbin, who's one of the best musical comedians in the country, he used to do his
Yeah.
lockdown shows, and he started putting poems in that he'd written. And you'll go, wow. it is kind of like a cool, sexy thing to do if you can do it.
Well, there's not much difference between writing a song and writing a poem, really. If you've got to put lyrics in. If you're writing a song that's just, for a tune, you might not get the words in there. But really, I think I read quite a lot of, songwriters, and I think you're a poet.
Well, Dylan,
that's poetry.
Bob Dylan, poet.
Yeah. There's modern people. I mean, the guy out of Elbow, for example, as well. Guy, whatever his name is. So that is poetry. What he's writing. There's quite a lot of, lyricists out there, and you think that's poetry. That, in fact, your lyrics are better than mine, and I'm classed as a poet. You're the songwriter.
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing about it, isn't it? So I talked a bit during the introduction, which you missed because I don't think you could hear very, very well. But because I did A-level English, and it was one of the few subjects, because I did loads of A-levels, but that was the one that really grabbed me because, I love to know, how did you become you? And to me, English lit especially is all about not just the writer or the creator as a talent, but as a person. And even when I watch comedy, I like to know, but where did you come from that made you think like that? And one of the things I mentioned was that there was a study that by a psychologist. I can't remember the name offhand, but I can find it for you. And it took place between 1600 and 1800. And they found that people in asylums, they were 20 times more likely to end up in an asylum if they were a poet than if they were a member of the general population. Now, at the time, that's a crude statistic. Maybe with modern eyes, we look back and go, well, maybe they were in the asylum and poetry was just something that they did. But it's so linked with mental health. It's just a no-brainer for me to think, how then do you help people's mood and help them change their lives? So it's like, what do you do then on a daily basis? How do you can write to heal or start dialogue?
Yeah. I don't know. I think if you just write something and people can connect with it, that's the thing. Me personally, I only write really to entertain people. I do write some slightly more deeper ones, but by and large, I just want to make people laugh and put smiles on people's faces. That's all I want to do. I don't want to be profound. I don't want to be known as a great poet. Like, Lemon. You mentioned Lemon Cisse and people like that. How much better poets than me? I really feel like I'm a joker in the pack. That's what I feel like. I can write serious stuff. I wrote one about Remembrance, a couple about Remembrance Sunday. I've had people tapping my shoulders randomly in pubs and going, "I'm buying that. Why that poem?" And that I saw. But yeah, I think when you're saying about touching people and helping people's mental well-being and stuff like that, I think it's just helping take their mind off. Because you're in that lockdown, it gets depressed at times. But it's just taking your mind off things. Just like you do with comedy as well. Taking people's mind off their problems.
You try and take them somewhere safe.
An hour. Yeah.
And it's interesting. My son is going to be a dad in the next couple of weeks, and it's pretty. I'm upset because he's making me a granddad, which
I'm quite happy about that. I'm chuffed a bit with that actually.
But one of my favourite McNeice poems is Prayer Before Birth, and it's basically just this unborn child talking about what's waiting for him when he comes out. And although it's written in maybe the late 20s, early 30s, still relevant 100 years later. And you just think, well, that's the link we've got with our past, isn't it? It's that whole thing of nothing's been done before, nothing is new.
You know what, John? When you mentioned that about, you're going to be a granddad, when the baby's born, if you want me to write something for the baby, I'll do it.
Well, I'm not having you writing one of your, hey, the baby's come out. Let's all give a shout. Join the military, lads. That's what it's all about. Having you one of your subtle recruitment drives.
Don't perform to an audience of one.
Mate, but that's the beautiful thing about writing a poem. You write it yourself and you keep it. I mean, I've got books and books of stuff I've written, and I've never revealed this. on here or even in public before, but when I first started doing comedy, after about 2 or 3 years, I did a spoken word gig, and it was up in
Okay.
Kentish Town. And I used to go up there once every sort of 5 or 6 weeks and just read out some of my poems. And I just did them straight. They didn't know I was doing comedy. And then one night, Michael McIntyre was on, and he was like, "All right, John, are you here as well? Are you headlining?" I went, no, I'm just doing just doing a set." And he went, "Oh, mate, okay. Well, if you're not headlining and I'm not headlining, I wonder who is." And then I was headlining, but I was headlining reading a poem. And I thought he was just going to rip the shit out of me, mate. I've just got to just take it, you know. But he actually sat and listened and went, "Oh wow, that's amazing! Like, why don't you do that instead of comedy?" I was like, "Oh, mate, nah. I don't mind singing. I'll do a bit of acting. I'll do a bit of comedy. I'll even try and dance. But reading out one of my poems in public, mate, I'm like, woof. That's
Yeah,
a
do you know
biggie."
what? I didn't know you did that, John. But you know what? There's another thing as well, John. And people go get a book published, and I've got a book draft done, but I've got such a short attention span that I haven't finished it. I've just got to proofread it again. But it's never been something that I've wanted to do. People go, "You published?" I'm not really bothered about getting published. I write to be heard. I'd rather just get it out there. It's weird that. So the desire to see my stuff on paper has never really fired my rockets, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just
It's an
one of
interesting one.
them things.
So what's the future hold for you, mate? What's the long term plan? What are you gonna do?
Clue, mate. I've got a bit of time left in my job, so I'm going to carry on doing that. I want to start performing again, but I did a theatre show in Nantwich earlier this year in a proper theatre, and it went down a storm. So I know that if I can get the right, audience, that it'll go, that I could, have a good jab at this. But it's just I'm a little bit frustrated at the moment because if I do a show online, I'll get loads of people watching it. I was getting messages from Australia, Canada, America saying you've helped us get through this lockdown. Some of the shows have had thousands of views. I know I actually made a joke to my audience. I said it's like what through month of geriatrics. And I think we were all quite happy with that. But I find that once you start to say to people, I'm going to do a show live, and you've got to leave your house, and you've got to go out in the rain, and you've got to catch
Yeah,
a tube, and you've got to catch a
yeah.
train, that they're thinking, can you not just do one and we can watch it online again? And so, yeah, I have a little bit frustrated having done all the online shows that there isn't a bigger audience to go and do it out there live. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I can see that, and it's so that's why I've always found you the kind of contrast between you, the trained killer, and you, the guy who who can deliver the trained killer lines. It's just an amazing. It's a different side to you, isn't it? It's a different string to your bow, I guess.
Yeah, but when you say stroker, I'm more inclined to try and tickle them to death.
Well, yeah, you could always tickle them. Mate, I don't know if you realise this, but
Well,
we have now been talking for 55 minutes, and that is more or less our hour done. And I
how,
honestly, I know I don't see much of you, Mac. I could talk to you for days, mate. I find you fascinating, interesting, super talented, and there's not many guests I've had on that I've been slightly in awe of, but you are definitely one of them, mate. And I hope
very
you
kind of
publish
you,
that
John.
book. No, I do. I
It's
hope you
reciprocated to you.
publish that book, and I'll buy it, and I'll bring 2 books around when I'm traveling. I will send you the link to that book that I travel
Yeah.
with, Poetry in the 1930s, which is just great. And I will, yeah, I may even try and see if I can finally get mine out, and even if I just self-publish it just for me, because it's that thing of it is very therapeutic. People don't realize for your well-being, one of the best things you can do is write it down and write poems. A friend of mine lost their dad recently, and I sent him. Obviously, I'm sorry to hear it message, but I also sent him a copy of Dylan Thomas and Death Shall Have No Dominion, and just
Okay.
such a powerful piece of prose, just a wonderful, wonderful thing to do. And you're one of the few people I know. I said, who can make a money? Who knows a potter or a sculptor? Well, I know a poet, and I'm a better person for it, mate.
That's very kind of you. The other thing was John, when I first set out, people going, at last, I can now say I know a stand-up comedian. So there you go.
But mate, absolute pleasure. Hopefully I'll speak to you real soon. Like I say, I will send you that link. You're more than welcome to hang about and, while I just round the show up. And if you're back, we'll have a quick chat afterwards. But in the meantime, you take care, stay safe. That was Mac Mcfadden, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely amazing guy. And, just a real show of you can be a real man. It's not just about being an alpha male. The guy's been in the army. I joke about him being a trained killer. But he's been in the army, so he could murder you with a shoelace. But it's also about being this holistic man, and it's all about communicating. And we talk in this day and age constantly about toxic masculinity. And one of the things you can do to sort of challenge that is to be a bit more open, be a bit more sensitive, be a bit more kind, be a bit more caring. And if you can't say it, write it down. What greater way is there to get your feelings across than with the spoken word, with the written word, with a poem? I did point out that, I'm going to be a granddad soon. Again, I've got my stepson had a child and my boy's going to have a baby. And I am fascinated with the fact of what will this boy be? What will this child grow up and become? What hopes and dreams and visions will I have? Because one day I'll be gone. My grandson will still be here. The last verse of this poem is pretty incredible. It's called Prayer Before Birth. And I'm replaying it a lot of the time over and over in my head. But it just basically starts with, I am not yet born. Oh, fill me with strength against those who would freeze my humanity, would dragoon me into a lethal automation, would make me a cog in a machine, a thing with one face, a thing, and against all those who would dissipate my entirety, would blow me like thistledown hither and thither, or hither and thither, like water held in their hands would spill me. Let them not make me a stone, and let them not spill me, otherwise kill me. And I just think of this little child that's going to be born any day now, and he's in that womb at the moment, and we have all these hopes and dreams. We know he's going to be a boy, and I want this boy to be a modern, proper, progressive boy who will be able to talk, express himself, be kind, be caring, be gentle. And one of the ways that we'll do that is by communicating and doing what we're trying to do on this show every week. There is a link between poetry and well-being and wellness, because poetry is very, very therapeutic. Writing and reading poetry, it can help you express your emotions. It's not a standalone therapy, so when therapists do normally recommend poetry, they normally incorporate it with other types of therapy. Most PhDs score between 115 and 120 on the IQ scales. And apparently most poets will score 100 to 125, slightly brighter in general than people who've got PhDs. So there are some clues and indicators that people who are able to read and write poetry tend to have a higher IQ. So I don't know if I'm just selling this well enough, but it's been shown to combat depression and stress symptoms. If you are suffering or living with any symptoms of depression and anxiety, writing it down can help. But most importantly, what helps more than anything else is not being on your own. Every week I mention mind and time to change, but every week I mention the fact that those of us who are allies, who are in a good place, we need to reach out and offer a helping hand to people who are struggling. If you know anyone who's going through a tough time, just say to them, look, I'm here for you. What can I do to help you? Be part of their recovery, be part of their solution. Very often they won't acknowledge or even recognize that you're helping them. But when they get to a better place, as invariably people do, because people live with mental health issues, we're part of their journey, and maybe they respect us and thank us. We're here every Monday. Do tune in. And the rest of the time, do listen to Men's Radio Station and womensradiostation.com. Take care. Stay safe. We'll see you next week.
Well, that's the end of another great show. What a brilliant guest that was. I could have spoken to them for hours. Don't forget to check out all the other brilliant shows on the mensradiostation.com website, as well as womensradiostation.com as well. Do subscribe to all of our media outlets, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, all those things, but tell your friends. Big thank you to Lost Boys UK, who have provided this fantastic music for the show. Check out my website, happytohealthyou.com. We'll be back next week. Really do take care of yourself, and remember, you're not on your own. You're part of the mensradiostation.com family. Take care. Good night.